What is the nature of bliss and happiness? This is a topic of conversation all around the world because we all want to be happy, we all want to be blissful, we all want to be content. But a lot of us don't know how to achieve that, or we think that it is involved with having momentary pleasure and momentary states of happiness that we experience in our life. A lot of people incorrectly assume that is what happiness is. That's just a heightened state of experience that you're experiencing. It's not really what bliss is, what true happiness is, or true contentment. And this was something that the East began to tackle thousands of years ago and came to a wonderful conclusion and a profound insight that we can all come to understand when we begin to understand the Sanskrit Ananda. Now, Ananda means bliss. It means, more specifically, unassociated bliss. Now, this is what's important. Unassociated bliss. A lot of us probably can't even comprehend what that means in our day and age because we are so attracted to gaining momentary experiences of happiness or pleasure at the expense of a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety that happens in the in-between stage till we have these momentary states of experience. But the East understood, specifically in India and China, they understood that, hold the phone here, how do we experience this as our permanent state? And is it arrogant to suggest that this is actually our permanent state and we have been warped into believing we are this person with all of these problems and suffering and so forth and so on? So you have in India especially this Sanskrit term Ananda, which means unassociated bliss. Now this is linked to a longer word which is Sat Chit Ananda. Now you see Sat Chit Ananda everywhere through all the great texts within India, specifically the Upanishads. But it's littered throughout all of the great texts within, especially Indian philosophy. So you have Sat. Now Sat is pure being, pure being. It's existence itself, but pure being. Like qualityless, stainless, it's pure being. You could say Sat is the qualityless Brahman, NIRGUNA Brahman. And then we have Chit. Now Chit is pure consciousness, which is identical to the Sat. So we have pure consciousness, Chit. Now pure consciousness we could say is Atman, the undifferentiated consciousness within you and I. Or we could use Yogikos Sankhya as a template, and we could say Purusha, the pure awareness at the core of our being. You know, Atman and Purusha, pretty much the same. So there is that Chit. Now, and then we have Ananda, which is unassociated bliss. Or, you know, in general, we just say bliss. So Sat Chit Ananda. So being, consciousness, bliss. Or pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss, to be precise. Now, Sat Chit Ananda became popular, especially in the West, and Ananda became popular specifically in the West because of Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist. And we all love Joe's work, beautiful work, great contribution to mythology and a deeper understanding of especially Eastern spirituality. And Campbell unpacked this word, Sat Chit Ananda, and the actual Ananda component of this word became part of his core teaching, Joseph Campbell's core teaching, which is to follow your bliss or follow your bliss. You know, we hear this a lot in this day and age. You should follow your bliss or follow your happiness. Because Joseph explained that he doesn't really know Sat or Chit, but he definitely knows what Ananda is. He knows bliss. He knows what makes him happy, what makes him blissful. And for himself, obviously, it was studying mythology and so forth and so on. There's nothing wrong with this understanding. This is actually true to a certain degree. You should follow what makes you happy. You should follow what inspires you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's better to do something you like than to be forced into servitude for others, obviously. So We all want to experience that. We all want to follow our bliss. But this is missing the point of what Ananda actually is, because we're talking about here unassociated bliss, and we're talking about Vedanta. We're talking about the science of spirituality. We're talking about the science of self-realization, Vedanta. Because Vedanta, as you all know from watching many of my videos, is basically the essence of a lot of Eastern spirituality. If you want to understand Taoism, Buddhism, yoga deeply, you need to understand Vedanta. You need to understand Vedanta deeply as well, because it is the essence of the Vedas and the Upanishads. So we're going back a long way. And so the essence of Vedanta is obviously Satchidananda, pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss. And to understand this deeply, there is a great passage in the ancient text, the Gurakshapadanti. It states, "The knowers of the Absolute know the great Absolute, that is space, consciousness, and bliss, stainless, immovable, eternal, inactive, and unqualified." See, space here is being related to Sat, pure being, space, because that's that mind space, that at the essence of our being that you come in contact with. Now, as you heard in the passage, it says unqualified. Now, what we mean by unqualified is NIRGUNA Brahman, the qualityless Brahman, not Saguna Brahman, not with qualities, but NIRGUNA Brahman, the qualityless. This is what Brahman actually is, the qualityless Brahman. It's beyond this world, beyond character, beyond form, beyond qualities, even though we are encased within Brahman. So that's a longer conversation. But this is important to understand Ananda and unassociated bliss, because when we follow the great traditions, especially Vedanta, we're trying to get out of the habit of associating happiness and associating bliss. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy your time with your children or your husband or your wife or your friends, or having great experiences. Like you might go to a music concert or a sporting match, and it's a great experience and you should enjoy it, because life is about having fun. But it's even more fun when we come into contact with this unassociated bliss, because this means that you can be happy in any moment of life, and there's no reason for your happiness. There's no reason for your bliss. You don't have a reason for it. You know, there's an old story. There's a sadhu in the streets of India, and someone sees this guy. He's always blissed out of his mind every day, and someone's like, "Why are you always so happy?" And he's just like, "No reason." And like, so confusing for ordinary people to be happy for no reason at all. So we come into contact with Ananda when we begin to go through this process of thinning out our character, of doing the spiritual work, of thinning out the jiva, the persona system. And the more we thin this out, the more we come into contact with ANANDAMAYA kosha. Now, this is part of the 5 sheaths, the pancha kosha, which a lot of people follow in, especially Vedanta. And the ANANDAMAYA kosha is the 5th sheath. It's the bliss sheath. It's that level of existence where we are in pure bliss and we are in pure contact with Brahman, the ultimate reality. We've come into contact with our Atman. And this means that we have transcended all of the material world and all of the mental world and energy within the world. Transcended in the sense that we are not invested or influenced either way by the fluctuations of Maya or the fluctuations of Prakriti, all of this entire cosmic soup. We're not influenced here or there by it. Not that we don't exist and that we're not above feeling pain or pleasure, but we are not influenced either way. We see it for what it is, and you exist on this ANANDAMAYA kosha, this 5th sheath, which transcends the entire world. Now, when you're in this 5th sheath, that's, as you see, it's ANANDAMAYA kosha. So it's the experience of unassociated bliss. The experience of unassociated bliss. You've come into contact with that, and you don't depend on anyone else for your happiness. You are just completely blissed out. And that's because you've thinned out the jiva, which is in some sense, commingled with the other four sheaths, and it's commingled with Maya and Prakriti. It's dependent on the existence of Prakriti, on the energy and all of the mental energy and the physical energy of Prakriti. That's what your jiva, your personality, is dependent on. Its survival is dependent on that. And in Eastern spirituality, they explain that we usually don't experience any of this bliss state in some sense until death, because that's when we are forced in some sense out of our jiva. But obviously if the jiva is stuck to your pure awareness like super glue, then you'll have to live that karma out in the next life because that energy hasn't been cleansed out. So the idea here is Satchidananda is to cleanse all of this karmic stock and energy out of the jiva to come back into pure consciousness and to understand pure being, to understand Brahman, which allows you to experience Ananda. This is why it's important. So once you come into contact with Atman, you experience Ananda. You experience bliss, unassociated bliss. And you can just go on with your life happily without depending on this and that for your own happiness. And this also relates not just to Vedanta, but this also relates to Taoism as well. Because in Taoism, one of Lao-tzu's most famous lines was, "Do you know the contentment of contentment?" He's talking about this deeper level of contentment where you're not blown here or there by the fluctuations of life. And that's why Zhuangzi actually said, when there is no more this and that, you reside in the still point of the Tao. So meaning you're not blown here or there. You're not identifying with the duality of life. You're cleansing duality out of your psychology, out of your being, and you are coming into contact more with that non-dual reality, which is the actual reality of existence at the core of our being. Call it Brahman or Tao or what have you, but you're coming back into contact with that because you reside in the still point of the Tao. You are in the center of the Tao, and there is no more this and that. Partiality has evaporated. And so to know the contentment of contentment, as Lao-tzu mentioned, we need to end this partiality of experience, which includes associated happiness and associated bliss. As negative as that may sound, I'm not saying you should end having fun and great times. That's not what it is. But you should not be clinging to trying to have more of those experiences in the hope that that's going to fulfill your being and that's going to satisfy your existence. It won't. You can only satisfy your existence by coming back to its true nature and experiencing a bliss that is permanent and never goes away. It's part of your existence. It's unassociated. It doesn't depend on anyone. So that's what it means. Lao-tzu and Zhuangzi and Shankar and Gaudapada and Patanjali, they're all talking about this in regard that we shouldn't end our experience. Of course, experience is important. You're obviously going to come across interactions in your daily life, and you might have negative experiences, but you also might have positive experiences. But we tend to focus on more of the pleasurable aspect of life as opposed to the painful aspect of life. And what happens here, as Taoism illustrates a lot, is that when we're focusing on that, we're constantly in a process of trying to avoid pain and seeking pleasure. And when you're doing this, you're always putting a certain aspect of life up on a pedestal, and you're trying to reach that all the time, and you're trying to ignore all of this other aspect of life. But because life is rhythm, we continually experience it, and we continually suffer because we're trying to focus just on the pleasurable aspect of life. And we're trying to just be at the music concert every week, and we're trying to be excited about it, and we're trying to, I wish this could be every night. Imagine if it was every night. You'd be exhausted. You'd be exhausted. The reason why it was a highlight was because it broke up the monotony of your mundane existence, of your mundane life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Ananda, unassociated bliss, is to be completely content and blissful even in the mundaneness of life. So your nature is actually Ananda, is bliss. It's unassociated bliss. Now we need to come back in contact with that. And the way to do that is through sadhana, through strict sadhana, and also getting out of the habit of trying to search for happiness from past experiences. You're basing your future reality on past experiences, and you're trying to, in some sense, conjure up those old experiences to experience them again. And you think that this associated happiness is the nature of happiness. It is not. The nature of happiness and bliss is unassociated, and it's at the core of your existence. And we can tap into it any time when we begin to realize who we truly are as the Atman, the qualityless Brahman, as opposed to the conditioned jiva or persona that keeps us bound to suffering and searching a fleeting happiness that can never fill us at our core. Shanti, shanti, shanti.